Everyone has something in their life that can be a stressor, but some people deal with their situations in more positive ways in order to take control. It's not difficult. You can do this too. Welcome to Thinking Hypnotically, Living Mindfully, with your host, Rusty Williams. In this program, you'll learn how using hypnosis and mindfulness can lessen the stress and strengthen your life. Now, here is Rusty Williams.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I hope you're holding up okay. We're entering our third week, our third full week, I should say, of being completely quarantined in our home here. I hope you are holding up well. Just a reminder, don't forget to check out our website at njhypnosistraining.com. You can find us on all the usual social media sites. And you can email me at 13.rwilliams@gmail.com, and make sure you put on that .com or it's not going to go anywhere, is it? Well, last week, if you remember, we talked about hope. And we talked about the skills we can use to let go of stuff. We call it garbage, stuff that we don't need, stuff like negative thoughts and even words. And in doing so, we have a really good chance of keeping a positive mindset. And our outlook on life can really, literally change our brain chemistry. And there are a lot of studies, there's a lot of research, not just anecdotal research, that shows that by just having that positive mindset, using mindfulness, which is going to be my little teaser about where we're going in just a few minutes, we can actually change our brain chemistry, our thought processes, the way our brains are wired through what's called neuroplasticity. So, today, we are going to talk about some mindfulness practices and strategies that can be used to help keep us in the present without worrying about tomorrow or regretting yesterday. And specifically, we're going to be discussing these practices for young people, adolescents who, especially in these days, no doubt are impacted by stress and worry, even anxiety. And today, we're fortunate to be joined by a special guest, a guest who specializes in mindfulness-based stress reduction practices for teens. With us this morning is Gina Beagle. Gina is a psychotherapist, researcher, speaker, and author who specializes in mindfulness-based work with adolescents. An expert and pioneer in bringing mindfulness-based approaches to youth, she is the founder and CEO of Stress Teens, which has been offering her mindfulness-based stress reduction for teens program to adolescents, families, schools, professionals, and the community for over 15 years. She's the author of numerous books, including her latest, Take in the Good, Skills for Staying Positive and Living Your Best Life. Gina, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Rusty. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure, and I mean that sincerely. When I got your book months ago, I had there's no way. When I got your book, the latest book, Taking the Good, and I started reading it to do a little research for today's show, there's no way that I could have known, and I doubt, unless you have a crystal ball, you could have known when you were writing it how timely it would be for these days. And I just, the timing of you being on the show, and we're going to get into the meat of the book in just a minute, and other projects that you're involved with, but the strategies and the practices are just phenomenal. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's just, it's got my heart in it. It's a compilation of, things I've been thinking about for my entire career in the mindfulness community. And interestingly, the artist is a teen in college herself. So the person who illustrated it definitely has that youthful appeal. And so it was such an honor to get to work with a young artist as well and help her in her career. And I think bringing those illustrations to light in the way she did, I think also makes it so warm and appealing to people.
Well, and it says, I'm looking, I have the book right here in front of me, that it's illustrated by Brianna Chambers. And let me tell you, folks, Gianna did a phenomenal job with the illustrations. It certainly brings your words to life. And I'm assuming that was your intent.
Absolutely. I mean, if you saw my drawings, you'd see stick figures, but I would literally draw like little stick figures and little things, and she would transform it into these beautiful pages. So
well, she did a great job. So I read your bio. This is what I found in the books, on the internet. So that's the overview of who Gina is. But I'm curious because I wasn't able to find this, and maybe you can share with everyone how and why teenagers. How did you get involved in them, working with them, and is there a why behind it?
It's interesting. I got into it kind of a happenstance. My first actual internship, if you really want to hear the true story, here's the true story. So my first internship, I was working in an inpatient drug rehab for women and doing some work at a program for high schoolers who are having problems with substance. And I would go back between the two. And my supervisor at the time said, you really have a thing for teens. And I kind of thought, okay. I didn't really feel it, but I was like, okay, I'll just listen to her. I mean, I was in my early 20s at this point. I went through college pretty fast and my program really fast. So anyway, I was going to Santa Clara University, and a large HMO supervisor from there, from Kaiser Permanente, came, and they had an internship that was in the child and adolescent psychiatry department at Kaiser. And so I went there, and what I found, it was so interesting, is working with teens. I just kind of felt myself, like, although I have the maturity and the intelligence of an adult, I still resonate with those teen years. I still resonate with that teen who's suffering, who's experienced trauma, who really needs the advocate, someone to support them. And when I started working with teens, I just felt like, I don't know, I just felt like I got them, they got me. And when I first got into the adult MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction program, I learned it in grad school through Shauna Shapiro, who has a book out actually right now, through John Kabat-Zinn and Saki Santorelli. And I was, sitting on retreats. I was taking in all this adult information and seeing how it would either work for me or not. And when I was, practicing it with my clients, they're teens. And so I was transforming this information that I had received in this adult content to work for me, because some of the practices to me were really long. The sitting practices were sometimes an hour. And if you don't have really proper instruction and you're told to just sit for an hour, you can really go into a lot of deep places and not necessarily healthy places if you don't have the skill to attend to things that actually serve you, and if you don't know better. And so I would take the practices I was learning in the adult world, and then I was translating them for myself, and then I started using them with my teen clients, and they worked amazingly well. I worked in a hospital that used a ton of different evidence-based therapeutic approaches, and I was seeing these huge changes with the mindfulness content compared to those like CBT and DBT and other approaches. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with other approaches. I'm just saying that when I was offering them, I was seeing changes with the mindfulness content that I hadn't seen with others. And I asked if I could do a group there where I was working, and they said no. And said they thought I was a little crazy for wanting to do it. And I said, well, what if I do it as a research study? And they said okay. And I think the caveat there was that the IRB and this large division of research was never going to approve it. Well, they did. And they said I would only teach it once. Well, I taught it for 8 years. It was the highest attended group in that department. It had a huge, just a lot of staying power. And the only reason it stopped is because I left the job there. So it's kind of amazing. When I first started also, there weren't a lot of people doing this work. And a lot of people thought that mindfulness for young people wouldn't work. And that made me want to do it even more, to be honest, because I kind of am, when someone tells you can't do something, I don't know.
Oh, we're in good company.
Yeah, I get a little motivated to prove them wrong. So
you've been doing this since before mindfulness became the newest buzzword and the newest craze. You talked about John Kabat-Zinn. You were working with truly the pioneers 15 years ago with this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, mindfulness adult mindfulness has been around since 1979. The MBSR program started at UMass Medical School, and 1 year after I was born. So it definitely has been around longer than the youth programs. And so the youth movement for mindfulness is definitely in the nascent stages compared to the adult work.
And I would imagine, and I'm taking and I have your book here in front of me, and you should see it, Gina. There's more dog-eared pages and highlights. It doesn't even look like a book anymore. I apologize. But,
oh man, you gotta take a picture of that and send it to me.
Sure, absolutely. But from reading it, I'm looking at it, And you know, I doubt there are, and I maybe there are, but I'm assuming that most of our listeners right now are adults, and maybe even some of the adults who have children. And as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, wow, I wish I knew this when I was doing my work as a youth minister at the church where I served. I wish I knew this stuff when I was the school resource officer at a high school for 10 years, because I'll tell you what, there's some great strategies. But as I'm reading it, I also found myself, and my wife and I, sometimes we'd read it together at night, and we're making notes and we're saying, we can do this, we can do this. And over the past 3 weeks, some of the strategies, and you call them practices, which I love, and we're going to get into that in a minute. I found that people, I would say teenagers of all ages, kids of all ages,
Absolutely.
This book is, and the strategies and the practices are relevant for.
You know, I think that most of my work, particularly in the last few years, the books that I've written, this book, the Be Mindful book that is also with Shambhala as the publisher, are definitely for adults as well. I think my program, although was created for teens, over the last few years, I've also been doing a lot of trainings for professionals and doctors and adult MBSR, and just using my content, because in one day you can't really teach the traditional MBSR program. So in my opinion, the work in this book is for pretty much everyone. The only difference truly between my work and maybe some of the traditional formal MBSR or mindfulness-based stress reduction is that the practices are a bit longer. Mine, I feel like, are more applicable and approachable to the everyday person who's got life. You know, I mean, how do we bring mindfulness and these practices to the, 15 and a half hours of the waking day? If there's 16 hours in a day and you spend a half hour of formal mindfulness practice, there's 15 and a half hours left in that day to bring mindfulness and positive neuroplasticity practices to take in the good the rest of the day. And why not attend to those times instead of just the half hour?
And I'm thinking to myself as you're saying this, I'm wondering, now I think I know why this book resonates with me. My attention span, maybe a flea has the same attention span as I do. And these practices are so simple. When I learned mindfulness, and I learned it as an adult just some years ago, I found myself really connecting with some of the practices and the other practices, the other strategies, the other exercises, techniques, whatever word, meditation, whatever word you want to throw in there. It felt like it wasn't enjoyable. It was more like, how do I get through this? And I think it brings me back, when I was in seminary, we had a block of instruction on contemplative prayer. And in that, we had to practice meditation. Now, I was a cop. I forget about meditation. I thought all this stuff was all phooey, and come on, you can't convince me anything different. And so the instructor was trying to instill upon us, I guess the Buddhists would call it the empty mind. And Gina, I can tell you that I've never been so frustrated in my entire life in trying to get to a place of having an empty mind. And I remember, that we all have triggers, we all have those anchors, maybe is a better word, that we anchor a feeling to an incident or something that happened in our life. And from that moment on, the thought of meditation, I ran away from it because it was so painful to me. Then fast forward years later, here I am learning hypnosis, and part of hypnosis, we all want to, instill in our clients' mindfulness practices. And I thought, oh my God, what an opportunity that I missed, that my instructor missed back in seminary. And the way you explain it, everyday stuff that we can use different techniques for mindfulness. So that being said, we'll use this as the foundation, and then on the other side of an upcoming break, we'll talk about how we can put it to use. The kids today, the young adults, the teenagers, are young people, our future, let's face it. What are they experiencing that maybe I didn't when I grew up in the 60s and 70s? Is it any different? Is the anxiety different? Is it worse? Can you talk about that just for a minute or two?
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely think it's more prominent and it's worse than it was even, 10 years ago. I think a lot of it has to do with just being kind of bombarded with social media and the access to all of these, images that, I need to look like this and I need to be like this and I need to master all of these things. And basically you're having a lot of teens that are just extremely overscheduled, and they are spending the time which they should be sleeping, many of them on, social media. And the thing is that they need to sleep. Young people need sleep. And we could speak about this too after the break, but I'm teaching right now to teens during this pandemic. I have 2 different groups going on and online with teens all over the world. And I have to tell you, it's been pretty eye-opening to me to see how teens are responding, to see what skills that they already have, what they're doing, how they're dealing with it. It's been very interesting because the focus for them isn't as much on the surface that maybe I would have heard, a month ago of like, oh, so-and-so doesn't like me. So-and-so, didn't like my post, my this or that on social. And the shifting of what the teens are dealing with today, right now in this pandemic is quite interesting, as well as I have a student right now in my teen group who actually has the virus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's definitely, I feel like I'm getting frontline experience with hearing what they're going through and their struggles, and I think it's worth speaking to because they're kind of blowing my mind in a really positive way,
Well, as you were talking, I'm thinking, you were surprised at the way they're responding, and I was hoping that it would has surprised you in a positive way, as
absolutely.
Opposed to.
Absolutely.
Is it the anxiety, the stress of just everyday life of being a teenager? I remember when I was working in the high school, what the kids were exposed to, and you talked about social media and the likes. I remember growing up and our parents being able to kind of shelter us, kind of shield us, kind of protect us from the news. Well, with the internet, parents can't do that. Kids can just log on and see what's going on, and they can also see the spins of the actual facts. Well, is that impacting the kids?
Yeah, but not to be disrespectful. I mean, you have parents who are glued to the news too. And so, and myself included, right? It's like having the boundaries, setting boundaries, healthy boundaries around news watching and what news you watch. Right.
So we're all watching this together. Are what we're feeling as parents and adults, are our kids picking up on that? Is that playing a role?
Absolutely. Yes, definitely.
And I'm assuming there's things that we can do that we can help our kids, whether it's build some resilience, have some coping strategies, and things like that, if we know what to do. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, I think modeling some appropriate boundaries around, our kind of our news hygiene, what we watch, what we engage in, and, also engaging ourselves as parents in healthy activities that they can be engaging in, on every day, which I can get into as well.
You mentioned, and here's what we're going to do. I have a big asterisk in my notes, the stress hygiene plan that you came up with, and you just used the word news hygiene. So maybe this will be a good point, a good place to break. And when we come back, maybe you can pick up on what you mean by why you use the word hygiene and the stress hygiene plan, and maybe how we can share that as adults with our kids and how we can help our kids cope better, and maybe they'll even help us cope better. So why don't we do that when we get on the other side of this break? And we'll be back right after these words.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
The Voice America Live Events channel is here now to showcase your corporate, individual, or organization's live event. Visit voiceamerica.com/live events to see all of our past live events and find out more. Whether it's a multi-day conference, special speaker, or single-day event, we've got everything to make your event a success. We can do a few hours or a few days. For more information about taking your event to the next level, call Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417 or email info@voiceamerica.com. Again, that's Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417. Or send us an email to info@voiceamerica.com. Voice America is where you are and where you want to be. Join us around the globe as we broadcast live from some of the most interesting events available. Don't forget to view all our live events, including on-demand access to past events that you may have missed by visiting voiceamerica.com/live events.
Success starts here. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com. It's your world.
You're listening to Thinking Hypnotically, Living Mindfully. To reach the program today, you're welcome to call in to 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. If you'd rather send Rusty an email, his email address is 13.rwilliams@gmail.com. Now back to Thinking Hypnotically, Living Mindfully.
Oh, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Here we are, second segment of our show here. Before we go any further, Gina, for our listeners, how can they find you? Can they follow you on any social media? If they want to get in touch with you, how can they contact you? What's the best way they can go about doing that without stalking you?
StressTeens.com is my website. Training@StressTeens gets an email directly to me. I'll be teaching some new mindfulness groups for teens online, a 4-week class on the 16th of April, which I think is really appropriate for what's going on right now. Teens really need this stuff right now. So if you're interested, go to my website. There's a lot of free resources on there, a lot of videos, a lot of trainings that you can access. There's some mindfulness practices on the homepage you can listen to and download and share. I'm all about sharing and providing resources. I am one of those people that want to give stuff. So please check out the homepage and watch a few free videos on the homepage right now. There's even one for parents and teens and mindful getting along at home, because right now I know that for a lot of us under shelter, you didn't necessarily pick the person you're sheltering with. So you have
there we
to
go. Well, talk about timely. Yeah, I think we're all going to, we might crash your website with that one. And as far as your book, because I'm sure people are going to want to purchase Gina's book, there's an embedded suggestion. Where can they find your book? What's the best way they can, obviously we're sheltering in place. Is it the usual online bookstores?
Yeah, and Amazon's a great resource. Amazon, I think, would be easy. You can buy it directly from my website. There's a whole bunch of different bookstores, but, right now, easy if you've got, Prime, get it on Amazon and it'll get to you. The prices are pretty good on my books right now.
Great. All right. And speaking of your book, we're going to get to that in just a moment, but let's finish up talking about what you're seeing with young people right now. What can you finish up and yeah. That'll segue right into maybe how you came up with the title for the book and things like that. What are you seeing now with the teens you're working with?
Well, it's so interesting as I'm often teaching teens that aren't going through a pandemic about basic needs, to notice your basic needs when they're being met. Because if you notice your basic needs are being met, you notice you have resources, you have things you can look toward that are helping you, fulfilling you, supporting you. Basic needs being, shelter, food, clothing, water. And the thing is not everyone has them, but a lot of us do. And it's not to feel bad for having those privileges. It's that you have them. And so these are these resources that we have that we can turn to when we're feeling kind of miserable. And in addition to those basic needs, there are these like fundamental needs that we all have for safety, satisfaction, and our connection. And what I found, I was about to teach teens last week on this group I'm teaching about basic needs. And when I talked with them about things they're grateful for or things that they're doing right now, many of them are really aware of their basic needs right now, because so many of them, their needs have changed, their wants have changed. What they were maybe wanting and focusing on has shifted to, hey, I have food. How do I get food? I'm lucky because I have a house or a roof over my head, or I have clothes, or I'm not on the street, or whereas some schools, for example, don't have because they're not in place, kids aren't getting food. And so a lot of them were bringing up basic needs as the things that they were grateful for and that they were being met for them. And that was really interesting to me that they were already kind of in that space. At the same time, that can be hard to look at because maybe they're hyper vigilant and focused on it. In this particular group, it wasn't that. It was really about being grateful that they had those needs being met for them. Another area I talk about in my book and in my work with young people and for us all is the need for self-care, of giving attention to and engaging in ways to support your physical and psychological well-being. That's how I define self-care. And it's really important to be, engaging in micro moments of self-care. So self-care doesn't have to be a whole day of self-care. A lot of times people think they have to set a whole day aside, but really it's what can you do, even like as I call level 1 self-care, from 1 minute to 15 minutes a day that lets you know that you matter, that you're showing up for yourself. And what I find is that these teens were engaging, in mindful baking, finding interesting ways to connect with their friends, even though they can't be physically with them. And it was just really inspiring to hear the different ways that these teens are resourcing themselves, which is something I teach in my book. They're really taking in the moments that are good, that they can take in at this time. And what's great about taking in the good, when you do that, you're attending to something in the moment that's positive or pleasant. And when you're enjoying it in the moment, you're also creating a resource for yourself later, so that when things are difficult, you aren't on empty, so to speak.
And creating that resource, we call it a resource state of mind, but you're talking about a resource that we can go back to and visit so we don't run out of gas. And I love your analogies. And by the way, Gina's analogies in the book, they just get better. I have a whole list of the analogies and the metaphors that just keep piling up, and I love that. So these resources are really important for the teens.
Yeah, I think they're important for all of us. The thing is, we have these indicator lights on our phones that let us know that our phones need charging. We have, our indicator lights in our car when we need gas or our car needs servicing. We don't have clear-cut indicator lights on ourselves, and it's learning to identify what those indicator lights are because it's much more difficult to tolerate hard at times when you're on empty, when you aren't resourced, when you're hungry, when you're angry, when you're lonely, when you're tired. It's an activity in my book on HALT, getting your basic needs met. When you aren't at your kind of baseline, you're more vulnerable to, difficulties with your health, mental and physical.
Sure. And we know there's research, and I love the fact that you talk about research-based practices and evidence-based practices. And we certainly know that, when we're not doing well emotionally and mentally, a lot of times our physical health also suffers. And then vice versa, when we're feeling crappy physically, it can, lead us down a path of following emotions and feelings and fears and all that kind of stuff. And what you've been saying brought to mind something that I just find remarkable. I think the teenagers, you talked about social media and going on it and seeing everything. And I can't tell you how many times I see people and I'm sure their intentions are good, but when they put down these kids and these kids are only want this and they only want that, and they try to paint the generation behind us as a selfish bunch of, well, I think of a word, but I probably can't say it right now. And sometimes I just want to scream because, yeah, there's good and bad in everything. Let's face it, there's adults, and these kids are mirroring someone's behavior. You talked about what these kids are doing, that they're finding ways to connect with their friends, even though they can't be with them physically. They're physically, I think you said, mindfully baking, and the things that you've learned. And I find it amazing as adults what we can learn from children, from young adults, if we just take the time and listen.
Absolutely. I think that's why I also like working with teens so much, is that although I might be judged by some adult counterparts, and although teens can be very judgmental, I have found that they weren't judgmental of me. I found that if you're open and creating an awesome, mindful relationship with a teen, that you can really learn a lot from them, as well as you teaching them. And exactly. So, yeah, I think it warms my heart to see the young people today. I was teaching a professional class yesterday. I teach professional trainings online, and one of the professionals is also a parent, and her daughter turned 16 yesterday. And I found it really, definitely not the way you want to turn 16, right? You know, the idea of at 16, you want to go get your license, or you want to go out and have a party with your friends, etc. And it was so cute. She said that like some friend brought a present and left it on the package. Another friend drove by, you know, and honked their horn and called them. So it was like finding ways to celebrate that young person and, you know, while being physically distant. By the way, I really disdain the word socially distant. I like the phrase physically distant, because we're not asking people to not be social. There's lots of ways to be social. It's just we're asking people to, you know, keep physically distant from one another.
Whoa, okay, I'm writing that one down. I'll give you full credit, I promise. But as soon as this show is over, I'm blasting that on social media. And I'm going to give Jean a big old full credit for it. So you heard it here first, folks. Thank you, Jean. I think that's wonderful. That's, you know, it makes sense. And we think social distancing, and all the negative that can come from it. So thank you for that. That's great. Now, let me switch gears. Or let me use everything we've talked about so far, because I want to give you an opportunity to talk about this phenomenal book, Taking the Good. How did it come about? And maybe you can share why it's presented in the way it is, with just simple, easy-to-use practices and strategies.
Sure. So one of my mentors, Rick Hansen, a lot of his work is on positive neuroplasticity, and it's for adults. And so I took a training called a training with him a few years ago, or maybe more than a few years ago, and learned a lot about his work. And what I realized when I was with him and in this training is that it's kind of the next step to mindfulness. So when you're mindful, you are, you know, aware of your thoughts, feelings, physical sensations in the present moment. And when you are mindful and aware of your surroundings and your senses, etc., and more in the now, where do you put your attention? Do you attend to the negative, or do you attend to the positive? Because with teens, with all of us, we can be mindful just as easily, if not more so, because of the negative selection bias and the automatic kind of tilt to the negative as a protection for us. We can really actually just be mindful and focus of the pain, of the stress, of the negative, of the, you know, kind of the Debbie Downer, wah, wah. It's like when we're mindful, we can focus on that. But how do we harness the focus toward the good, and taking the opportunity to really harness the ability to notice things that are healthy for you, to focus on things that are good for you. Taking in the good is the process that I define it as the process of noticing, attending to, and taking in beneficial or good experiences as they're occurring. And we can teach our brains to tilt more to the positive with this active training. And positive neuroplasticity is that process by which the brain's changing in response to experiences, particularly positive or pleasurable ones. The brain wants and is seeking out positive, pleasurable moments. And when you attend to them, you are shifting away from that negative toward the positive.
With what we're going through right now, what suggestions, techniques, practices, for those of us, and I don't put much, you said earlier, we are glued to the TV, we are glued to the news, and we're being bombarded, because we know news sells, and fear is a part of that. But when there's so much negativity going on, there's so much worry, what can we do? Is there anything simple? Is there a strategy in the book maybe that we can do to just focus on that something good, even if it's just for 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds? Is there a strategy we can use, or is it just as simple as stopping ourselves and looking for something good?
Yeah, there's so many. I don't even have a simple answer to that, to be honest with you. There's so many options when you ask that question. There are so many different ways to go. I'm gonna speak for a second. You mentioned a little bit ago about what I talked about is stress hygiene. Right. And everyone is very focused on, staying physically distant around their, cleaning and sanitization plan. And I do think those things are necessary. But what I think is also equally necessary is maintaining your health, both physically and mentally. And if your stress is too high, you are impairing your physical health, your immune function. You are making yourself more susceptible to this virus if you aren't healthy in the way of managing your stress. And so what I find is also just the anxiety, the worry is not going to do anything for anyone. Worrying does not change whether something, we can't control outcomes. We can't change, worry does not affect change. However, we can create plans. We can, take action, create action steps to deal with difficult things. We can also kind of break our stressors down into what I call, something that's more acute, short-term, manageable versus those that are more long-term and chronic, and to start dealing with the things you can actually control first. So you feel, a sense of agency and that you have some effect on your current situation. I always, in my book, I call it riding the waves. And so you can consider your waves as stressors. So you can literally draw your stress waves. So draw your waves, draw what people, places, things, and situations, whatever stressors make up your waves, and then take those stressors that you've written and figure out which ones you actually can do something about, which ones are in your control, which are things that you could, easily fix, and get a couple of those on under your belt that you've, taken care of. Then you feel like, hey, I got this. I can do something about this. And then the longer terms are things you can't control. It's not that you're not going to have feelings about them. It's notice it. It's when we get stuck. It's when we attach to. It's when we push away. It's when we make our suffering and our stress worse by blocking out what is in this moment. Pair this, what I just said, with first you're going to notice what those stressors are, you're going to identify them, and then you tackle them. The other thing is to have resources such as like positive coping skills. My book has 130 positive coping skills, things to do that are healthy for you. I actually believe I have them on my website. I provide them on social. What I'll do after the show is I'll put them on my homepage so you can download the 130 positive coping skills. A lot of times teens or anyone might say, I'll say, I'll say, what are you going to do? How do you deal with this? I don't know. I don't know a lot or nothing. And it's like, here's 130 healthy things you can do to deal with when times are difficult or just when in any time. A lot of times we hold young people accountable for things we don't teach them. Maybe teens and us, all of us, are engaging in negative coping behaviors. They're not skills. They're behaviors because that's what we see. That's what we've learned. That's what's been modeled for us. Therefore, we need to turn to positive coping skills. We need to teach people that. And we also need to pair that with self-care. Taking in the good, doing things, little things that you enjoy, the cup of coffee, tea, taking a shower, going for a walk, petting your pet, little things that make you smile, that bring you happiness.
And that importance of making you smile and bringing you happiness, and you know this much better than me with your background, your education, we know that those things really do trigger some of the feel-good hormones in our brain, and that alone can give us, you talked about getting a few things under your belt, like a few things that we can take care of, the small little issues that are causing us angst or fear or worry. And just those things that make us happy or make us smile in that routine. What a great bit of advice. We can still find those things that make us smile and even give ourselves permission to laugh.
For sure. I mean, we all need also a little bit of mindful downtime. It's okay to, distract yourself from the news. It's okay to, watch a few hours of Netflix. I wouldn't, binge watching all day might not be the best, but, it's okay to also have some healthy distractions.
Maybe this is a good place to stop here for the break, because I want to get to your book. I got pages and pages of notes that I prepared for today, and I knew we weren't going to get to it. I knew when I have someone like you as a guest with your background, your expertise, your experience, that I'm not going to get to everything. But I really want to get to what's inside this book.
Rusty, I've been talking all about the book. You just maybe don't realize it. This whole last segment was the book, is the book. I know, but I'm looking at so many things I want to get to. All right. Well, so on the other, fire me questions on the other side.
I'm gonna start firing you questions, all right, and we're gonna do that right on the other side of this break.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
Voice America programs are now available on your favorite connected device, including Amazon, Alexa, and Google Home. Through streams with Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio, listening to your favorite show is as easy as saying the show name followed by the word podcast.
Hey, Alexa, play Finding Your Frequency podcast.
If that doesn't work, try adding on TuneIn or on iHeartRadio or on Apple Podcasts.
Tune in to the Voice America Variety channel on the Voice America Talk Radio Network. Voice America Variety broadcasts a diverse array of topics, reaching a global community. Our experts come from all walks of life, and the topics they discuss are everything from current events, arts and entertainment, leadership, parenting, relationships, self-improvement, career advice, and a variety of other topics. Check us out today. You're sure to find something of interest. Voice America Variety. Talk on today's hot topics.
Success starts here. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com. It's your world.
You're listening to Thinking Hypnotically, Living Mindfully. To reach the program today, you're welcome to call in to 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. If you'd rather send Rusty an email, his email address is 13.rwilliams@gmail.com. Now back to Thinking Hypnotically, Living Mindfully.
All right, well, welcome back. Here we are back with Gina Beagle. And Gina, one more time, how can our listeners find you? What's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
StressTeens.com. A lot of times people think I said teams. It's teens like teenagers. StressTeens.com.
And there's a contact page, there's resources for them. And so if they want to shoot you a note or they just want to find the resources you've mentioned earlier, that's the best place to find you.
Yeah, I'm going to put those 130 positive coping skills right on the top of my homepage. There's also some free videos that I recently did since this virus started to help families kind of get a handle on it. I hope this radio show gives you some tips and tools as well. And yeah, I don't have anything else to say.
Right. And I'm sure there's a at least mention there, if not a link, to your book, Taking the Good, Skills for Staying Positive and Living Your Best Life.
Yeah, there are links to all the different, there's details on all the books that I've written, and links to them and resources from all of them actually on my website.
Yeah, it's kind of not fair because we only have Gina for an hour, and the books that she's written, another book is Be Mindful and Stress Less. I mean, Gina, I could have you one for half a day, and we probably wouldn't get through half the material here. So you said to just shoot away. Gina and I were talking over the break, and I want to get to this book. We talked about the more of an overview of the chapters, of the strategies, of the practices. And by the way, Gina, I love the way you distinguish that they're mindfulness practices, not mindfulness meditations. I think you said that in an interview I saw, and I love that. Simple, easy practices for us to do instead of thinking we have to try to learn how to meditate. So do you have, let me put you on the spot here. Is there a favorite? I mean, of all the strategies in Taking the Good, of all the practices, of all the suggestions, do you have a favorite?
I do, actually. It's so funny.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so, I talked a little bit about riding the wave, which I find useful it's so interesting. I was teaching at a hospital in Canada, professionals, and I thought, I'll try the ride the wave. This was a couple years ago. I'll try the ride the wave with them. I usually do it with teens, and it was amazing how much they got out of doing it. So I started now doing it with adults as well. So the ride the wave is definitely a great one. Because it's all, waves change, right? So things that are in your waves, your stressors, they shift, they change, they wax, they wane. And so there's a lot of, seeing the impermanence of those and how if you do them from week to week, day to day, they're going to be different. But another activity that I love is the one in which you can actually use to engage in positive neuroplasticity. And so I call it taking in the beneficial experiences with HOT, and it's a way to learn to resource yourself. So HOT would be like thinking of a campfire, right? So if you have a campfire, you need to get the resources to build that fire. So you need, kindling, firewood, matches, etc. So that's kind of the going and you have an experience or you go and create one. So in this example, you're going to have a campfire. So you get the things you need for that campfire. So you then look for something in your environment that you can attend to that's beneficial to you, or you actively go and create something. So what I mean by that is either let's say you have a garden outside or you have a backyard to walk in. So you can go in your backyard and notice pretty things to notice, or you can go in and create a moment. So then maybe you don't have a backyard. You go and then buy some flowers, let's just say. It's like, there's lots of wonderful things. They don't have to be these big aha moments. There's these moments, micro moments we all have of things that are good that we don't necessarily notice. It can literally be as boring as looking at your coffee cup, noticing what's pretty about it, noticing what you like about it, noticing how it serves you, noticing what you have in it, what that smells like. You can attend to those things. So the H is to have the beneficial experience or go and create one. So in this campfire analogy, which is in the book, it's, you get the stuff for a campfire. Then you have the O of hot, open to the beneficial experience. So in this example, of the campfire, you start the fire. You're noticing the flames, you're noticing the environment, maybe you're noticing the stars if you're outside. I'm just giving you this, picture of this campfire. And so opening to a beneficial experience is, while you're doing that experience, noticing it, noticing your thoughts that are arising, notice the feelings, notice your senses, letting your senses kind of come alive to what you're doing while you're doing it. And then the T is to take it in, to really savor the sweetness, take in the beneficial experience, or the T. For example, if it's a campfire, maybe you get some s'mores, you get to have roast some marshmallows. You're gonna add to that beneficial experience by kind of taking it in even further, the T. And so when you're doing that, you're holding to those moments. You're not clinging to them. You're taking them in. A lot of times when people have kind of wonderful things to share in their life or good moments or successes, we kind of tend to downplay them or not really share them a lot. And a lot of that has to do with people thinking that got ego if you share it, or you shouldn't be, sharing your wonderful moments. It's that you have to figure out who your kind of tribe or posse are to share those things with. Who are the people you can trust that support you? Because it's really important to share those positive, good things that happen in your life. You want people to really support you with them. It's important to attend to these positive moments. So the hot, have a beneficial experience, open to it, take it in, is a way. If you do this 12 to 15 seconds, 6 to 9 times a day, just these little moments, you're engaging in positive neuroplasticity. You are creating new neural connections. You're creating these neural connections that shift away from the negative and toward the positive. You're shifting the focus of your brain to attend to and notice positive, healthy things for you.
And by doing so, we can actually train our brain, and then we, like you said, neuroplasticity, our brain learns to start thinking about the more positive things instead of focusing on those things that are scary, or those things that have caused us harm, or those things that cause us anxiety.
Right. And it's noticing, it's not that those other thoughts aren't going to arise. It's just, sure, we don't need to give them extra attention. We don't have to give them brain time.
We don't need to take a flashlight in a dark room and just shine it on those things that are negative. We can turn the light on the whole room and look around and see there's a lot of other things other than just that negative. It's still there. We're not making believe it doesn't exist, but it's looking around and seeing what else is out there. And the campfire analogy is perfect. And I believe that's page 23, isn't it? I won't put you on the spot.
It is actually page 85.
85. Okay. All right. Well, how about if we go to a different page? Because I have favorites.
All right.
So, hey, this is my show. I should be able to have one favorite I can talk about.
I'm ready.
So I love boating, and your analogies of riding the wave. And there's another activity that you call urge surfing. But one that really stuck for me is what you call drop anchor.
Okay.
And it's about, holding. There's something we can't see. An anchor drops down in the water, even though we're not aware it's there. So maybe you can take it from there, because I love the analogy, I love the metaphor, and I love the way it's helped me. And I'm telling you, as a hypnotist, as someone who practices mindfulness, I'm using the skills in your book right now to help me get through some of the anxiety that I've been feeling these past couple of weeks. And this has been one that's really worked. So I'm not saying it's better than any of the others, but maybe you can explain it in a way that would help me love it even more.
All right, I'm ready. So let's say you're in your rowboat, you're aware of your stress waves, and so you're in your ocean right now. Just imagine, you're in your boat and you drop an anchor from your rowboat, and that anchor is there to hold you in place, right? So you don't your rowboat isn't like just out aimlessly in the ocean. So it grounds you, it anchors you to the moment. What's also interesting about this anchor is that even if the waves are really like strong and fierce on the top, most often when you drop an anchor deep below the surface of the water is calm and still. And so the thing is that you want to figure out what are ways that you can get to your calm, still place. What are the things that allow you to kind of ground yourself, to drop into this moment? Mindfulness practice is one way to do that. A drop-in practice is something I created, which is really, it's like checking in with yourself. It's kind of creating this drop-in is really checking in with you. A lot of times we're so connected to just the part of our head and our thoughts that we might be missing the cues and signs that our body gives off. And if you're noticing kind of our grounding focal points, what are your grounding anchors? So, your fingers, the sensations around your fingers or your hands, your toes, taking a walk. Literally, what are the things that can ground you in this moment when you are acutely stressed? But additionally, it's like, okay, when you drop in, when you think about your calm, still place, who are the people in your life that can support you right now? What are the places you can go that support you? What are the things that help you? Like literally physical things or songs, music, art, what are the books? What are the things that you turn to that help you? And in knowing that kind of, creating that kind of resource list, creating a list of like 10 things that help you drop anchor, that get you to your calm, still place, so that I'm just going to say it. It's not even for lack of a better word, because I could come up with a better word, but that's not me. So when the shit hits the fan in your life, you need to figure out, okay, what can I turn to? Where can I go? And so that's where that drop anchor comes in. It's also where those positive coping skills come in, because sometimes the stuff's really going on, life's really showing up, and you got a lot of the feels. And when you got a lot of the feels, you need to have a nice little list, like those positive coping skills to turn to. Because sometimes when you got a lot of feels, or you got a lot of adrenaline, or you're thinking a lot of things, it's hard to remember the things that chill you out and calm you down. So also, though, if you ahead of time create a list of 10 things, you can literally look at that list and be like, okay, I can go do this, and this will make me feel better.
And when you say make a list, we only have a few minutes till close. I mean, I've made an actual physical list, and in your book, you encourage that. So you're not talking about just make a list in your head.
No,
I've actually made a physical list of those things that are my anchor, that help me, pay attention to my senses, to the awareness, that help ground me, the people that have supported me, some of the things I enjoy doing that calm me, and I've actually written them down so I don't have to rely on my memory, because when you're stressed, your memory's affected.
Exactly.
And I can actually go to them, and it's been my go-to guide, and it really has anchored me. And it's funny because maybe I love this too, because in hypnosis, we talk about anchoring techniques and how we anchor a suggestion to different things like that. So this one just really, really resonated with me. And you would encourage people to actually make a physical list.
Yeah, I do. I really do, because a lot of times we don't engage in something that's healthy for us unless we see it. So like putting out notes on Post-its, like putting them in weird places, like your bathroom mirror, next to your bed, on your computer, on your phone. You can put reminders for yourself. You can put them in your calendar. I mean, there's lots of ways you can get creative with little positive reminders for yourself. I know personally, this is really personal, but I have a mantra that I put on different places, and mine says, I am enough, I am me with my gifts and flaws, and for that I'm grateful. And I have it in front of me right now on my computer screen, but I had it for a while all over, because although I teach mindfulness and I teach all of these things, I am far from perfect, and I am constantly a work in progress, and sometimes I don't feel like I'm enough, and so therefore I created that. So find the ways in which you can anchor yourself when life shows up.
What a better way to I can't think of a better way to end the show. How's that? these Post-it notes, and I am enough, even with my flaws, my gifts, and my imperfections. And right now, I think we really need to be gentle with ourselves. So thank you for that.
Really quick, there's a practice in my book. It's called Celebrating Being Perfectly Imperfect.
Okay.
And I think that if all of us right now are striving for perfection, we are all going to be very miserable and unhappy. Right now, especially, we need to give ourselves a little grace, a little ease. And, we might be a little bit more sluggish, a little bit more less productive. You got to be kind to yourself in all of what's showing up for you right now.
Excellent advice to take us out of this and take everyone into the rest of the week and the weekend. Gina, I want to thank you so much for giving up an hour of your day with us. I really appreciate it. Folks, that's all we have for today. We will see you next week. Be safe, everybody.